dum dum, beetle dum dum, beetle dum dum, beetle dum dum. There was a turtle by the name of Bert. He knew just what to do.
What's up, subscribers? Welcome back to Skybox Entertainment. My name, of course, is Turtleburt, and you guys look good today. Welcome back to Turtleburt Talks. This week, we're going to be diving into my personal life a little bit. It's going to be very reminiscent of an older Turtleburt Talks video I did called My History with Game Design, which is where I rambled on for like 20 minutes on my very limited knowledge of how to create a video game. If that's something you're interested in watching, you can find a link down in the description, or if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll put a link up in the corner somewhere. And for this episode, I want to talk about my favorite guilty pleasure video game series. The thing that I like to play that I feel like a lot of people won't agree with me on, especially a lot of my closer friends. But before I get too far into that, I want to talk about the term guilty pleasure for a second, which generally means something that you enjoy that not a lot of other people do, so you don't really talk about it, you're not really proud of it, you kind of enjoy it in secrecy. Personally, I hate the term. I hate it. I despise it, because I don't feel like you should be ashamed of anything you enjoy. You are who you are, and your experiences through life is what has created these things that you like within you, and you shouldn't have to hide that because the general public doesn't agree with you. Unless, of course, the thing that you like is just not good. For example, if you like kicking baby strollers and pushing over old people, then yeah, absolutely, that would be a guilty pleasure, and you should 100% be ashamed of yourself. And this term really kind of branches more out in music, I feel like. When you like an artist like that not a lot of other people do, or people within your social circle do. For me, I'm a big metal guy. I like a lot of metal music, so when I talk about anything that's not metal to those friends, they kind of give me this like holier than thou approach when I'm like, yeah, I like Post Malone, I think he's alright, and they just don't agree with me because, you know, it's not Thy Art Is Murder, which is a really good band, by the way. You should definitely check out, but only if you're into like hate and anger and loud noises. Now that's neither here nor there. I'm just simply saying, if you enjoy something and it's purely innocent, don't be ashamed of enjoying that thing. Embrace it. Be yourself. I don't want to use a cliche term, but you are the only you that exists, so you might as well embrace it to some degree. So with that being said, the first point I want to make is that my guilty pleasure is a sports game. I'm not generally someone who enjoys sports games. I mean, I think everyone has their sports game of choice that they go to, you know, whether it be Madden or 2K or whatever. I'm generally not someone who plays a lot of sports games. They get way too repetitive for me way too quickly. With that being said, I have two weaknesses. The first of which being MLB The Show, but that's just because I'm a huge baseball fan. And from a gameplay perspective, MLB The Show is incredibly detailed, and there is a lot to do in that game, and I have sunk countless hours into multiple career modes within the franchise of that series. But the other sports game I like, and my guilty pleasure, is NASCAR. I love NASCAR games, and I always have. So we're going to dive into why I enjoy them, and we're just going to talk a little bit about it. As always, I'm going to throw some footage of NASCAR up in the background, and I hope I hope you guys enjoy it. So the thing about NASCAR is that it gets a very stereotypical rap, right? Generally speaking, if you like NASCAR, you hear a couple of different perspectives from people. They'll either say like, oh, that's just turning left, or you must be Southern, which to one of those points, yeah, technically I am. I was born and raised in North Carolina, which isn't necessarily the most southern of states, but there's definitely some very southern parts. Where I lived was definitely the polar opposite of, let's say, Charlotte, which is not to be confused with Charlottesville, Virginia, because that's a completely different conversation right now, and I don't really want to be associated. So yes, NASCAR primarily is a southern sport. It kind of always has been, and most of its popularity is in the South. But to be honest with you, I don't actually keep up with the sport. I haven't in a very long time. I actually probably couldn't even tell you most of the drivers that are on the field right now. But with that being said, the first thing I love about NASCAR games is that it's a huge nostalgia factor for me. I grew up watching NASCAR. My family loved NASCAR. You know, that was kind of a thing, especially in my local area, that was pretty big. And I used to Really enjoy watching the races. I used to, really follow drivers, and I genuinely enjoyed the sport until I was about, I don't know, 13 or 14, and then I started to kind of disassociate with the sport itself. Mostly because I can't watch any sport for like 4 hours at a time. I love baseball. Baseball is hands down my favorite sport, but I can only watch highlight reels unless I go to a game because I just can't sit there for 4 hours to watch a pitcher throw balls. I'm sorry. The same goes for NASCAR. I'm sure it's extremely exciting. I've never actually been to a NASCAR race, but I just feel like, from what has been described to me, is you sit around the track and then every few seconds a group of cars go by you. And as exciting as I'm sure that is to feel the engines and watch these cars go by you at literally 200 miles an hour, it's not something I enjoy watching in a long form. Now, something I do love enjoying is having a couple drinks and watching NASCAR crash compilations. But then again, who doesn't love a good, safe car crash?
And let's show you this in real time. Wow. Talladega, world's fastest junkyard.
See Michael Waltrip just barely catching the left rear quarter panel of Kevin Harvick. Get him involved. Stewart's car upside down. On top of Casey Kane's number 5.
Well, Brett Keselowski's one here.
Car to the wall, turn one hard.
Oh, that's going to be big. Big.
Oh, huge wreck.
Everybody.
They're still running into each other. Newman's on fire.
You can't look away. Like, there's something about them that's just, it's intriguing. Race Hail, Praise Dale. So for me, that's the first part of it. It's just nostalgia. I grew up on it, and I grew up on these games. My parents used to buy me every new NASCAR game when they come out, whether I really wanted them or not. They always bought them, and so I always had them. And admittedly, most of them were the same game year after year, but that's kind of just what you get with sports games in general. And truth be told, I've always liked racing games. I used to love the Burnout series on the PS2. I used to love Need for Speed Underground, Underground 2, Most Wanted, and more recently I got really into Forza. I absolutely love Forza. Actually, as I've aged, I have gotten more and more into racing simulators than just arcade games. I actually don't like Forza Horizon because it's more arcadey, and I prefer the realistic simulator of the traditional Forza series. But now to go back on the first point, it's a bunch of left turns. Yes, admittedly, it is a bunch of left turns if you're looking at it from just face value. The thing that I like about NASCAR isn't necessarily the fact that you just turn left. There are road courses. I hate to burst everyone's bubble on that, albeit only a handful. They do exist in NASCAR, and they are playable in the games, and for me those are probably the most fun experiences because they do offer more variety in terms of what happens every few seconds on the track. But the reason I like NASCAR, the reason the whole left turns thing doesn't bother me, is because I don't really focus on it. It's actually kind of just in the back of my mind when I'm doing races. I'm focused on other things. For example, for me, NASCAR is it's a lot more intense than something like Forza, where you're racing maybe 12 cars at a time. And the thing about Forza is I feel like there's not a lot of pack racing. You're not racing around a lot of cars, maybe for a little bit, but if you ever get out in front and you know what you're doing, that's the whole game. You're just running the track with cars behind you. The thing about NASCAR is there's so many cars. You're racing 39 of the cars, 42, depending on which version, how old the game is. You're racing a pack of 40-ish cars at a time, which is a lot of opponents. And especially on a track like Bristol that's very small, it's very cramped, you have to worry about every little move you make. Tracks like Daytona, the smallest touch can fuck your race up. So it's very strategical in what you do throughout the race. Yes, of course, Forza having more of a, you got to hit the turns the right way, there's more variety in how you have to handle the track. With NASCAR, you not only have to handle each turn correctly, but you also now have to really worry about 40 other cars that are potentially around you at all times. And for me, that's intense. Getting in the middle of a pack of cars and just running at 200 miles an hour is very intense. And knowing that the smallest mishap could quite potentially ruin your day, it's exciting to me. On top of that, NASCAR is an endurance sport. It's not something that you do really quickly. So with Forza, and forgive me because I've never really done like a full-length race in Forza, but averagely from what I can tell, you're running 6 to 12, 24, 30 laps, which is a good amount of laps depending on the size of the track. But with NASCAR, if you're running a full race, you're running somewhere around 500 laps, and you have to plan pit stops and drafting strategies accordingly as your car changes and gets damaged, as the field changes, as you have to plan for pit stops and cautions happen out of the blue. And I realize all that stuff is also, relevant in other racing games. But for me, NASCAR is an extreme endurance sport. It's not, get to the front and stay up front. You have to kind of manipulate your chances for the length of this race with this many other opponents, and you have to plan yourself strategically on what you're going to do, not only this race, but if you're going through a season mode, making sure you make the right moves that are beneficial to winning or that season. And all of this is my perspective. I'm not saying that NASCAR is a better racing game than Forza. I actually don't think that. I think Forza, for all intensive purposes, is a much more detailed experience, and it's a better core racing game, but I enjoy what the NASCAR element brings to the table. With that being said, I think there is a lot of skill required to play a NASCAR game at its max difficulty with that many other cars in the field. Once again, you not only have to race in a huge field of cars for an extremely long amount of time, you have to be very precise on what you make that car do. In Forza, I feel like I can fuck up a lot more and just kind of plow through the field with no real repercussions on to what happens. In NASCAR, I feel like there's so many obstacles with those other cars. There's so many small things that can happen at 200 miles an hour, or if you overturn, underturn, that can just really fuck up the experience. And that intensity is what keeps me going. There's that pinpoint accuracy I feel like I'm aiming for, and for me that's the fun, is being consistently a steady driver, overcoming all these other cars and dealing with all the other aspects of the game. And with the newer NASCAR games, and I'm going to exclude Heat Evolution here because I didn't really like it, so I didn't play a lot of it. I actually bought it on Steam and within 2 days returned it. With like NASCAR 15, for example, there's a much larger importance on actually tuning your car. So you go to these race weekends and you run several practice laps. You get the car tuned to a T, just like you want. You're affecting downforce, tire pressure, wedge adjustments, all these kinds of things that will ultimately benefit your car. And you, once again, when you're tuning, you have to prepare for the endurance. Your car is going to get progressively worse throughout the length of the race, depending on how long you set the races for. So you have to take all that into consideration, as well as tune your car during pit stops to effectively adjust to changing weather conditions, or the way that other drivers are racing, or different patterns or lines on the track you're attempting yourself. And I know tuning cars is not in any way revolutionary. Forza has been doing it for years. A lot of racing games have been doing it for years, and I know there's a lot of diehard Forza fans out there who that's all they do. They tune these cars to go insane speeds on the field, or they design their cars specifically for drifting in mind and things like that. But I feel like within at least the career mode, there is such an implied importance of tuning your car in these NASCAR games than I've experienced in most other racing games. In Forza, I feel like, okay, so this is a B-class race. I'm just going to install these upgrades in my car to make it the highest performing B-class car I can, and then just dominate the race. Whereas with NASCAR, I feel like I have to take in so many different elements into place when I'm tuning the car before the race to make sure it's going to last the length of what I'm trying to do. But once again, I'm also a guy that likes racing simulators. I enjoy that amount of depth to a degree. Is it something I play every day? No. But every once in a while, I do get that itch, and I want to do it. And I especially love the career modes. I love starting out with like a no-name team, earning sponsors, getting contracts, building a team for your driver, and ultimately becoming you know, the fucking next Richard Petty or whatever. As far as the games that I like in particular, I really liked the old EA games. So pretty much like NASCAR, I think it's like NASCAR Thunder all the way through NASCAR 07. There's probably some of my favorite ones. Those are the ones my parents always bought me. Those are the ones I have the most experience in. And I could probably play those games blindfolded. When it came to next gen, I did like 08, 09, and then Technics took over. And the first NASCAR Technics game, I think it was 2011, was garbage. And I was so excited for it, and it was so crushing. They did improve on it with NASCAR Inside Line, 14 and 15, and so on. Those were huge improvements on a gameplay perspective, and I really enjoyed those. And then another company, NASCAR Heat, took over the reins of the franchise. Here's the thing, NASCAR Heat was a game that came out on the PS2, and it was a really good one for its time. I won't say it was as good as the EA versions of NASCAR, but NASCAR Heat was a lot of fun. So I was really excited when that series was being brought back, and some of the people that worked on NASCAR Heat were going to be working on the new one, 2 years ago, last year? But it just wasn't good. I did not enjoy it. There's like an easy mode and a simulator mode, but I felt like both of them were just far too easy. NASCAR Heat Evolution 2 is right around the corner. They're adding the truck series again, the Busch series again. You got dirt track racing now. It looks like they're taking more of a leap with the series, and they're fine-tuning the things that they kind of failed on last time. With that being said, I'm not necessarily going to pick it up day one. I'm going to probably red box it or just see what the overall impression of it is after release, so that I don't spend $60 and then have to argue with Steam again on why I want $60 back. If I had to pick a favorite NASCAR game, it would probably either be NASCAR 07 or NASCAR Inside Line. Both of those were insanely good, in my opinion. So with all that being said, and now you know to the length of my nerdiness, let me know in the comments section down below, how do you view NASCAR games? Is it just left turns and a southern thing, or do you enjoy the series? If so, why? If not, why not? Let me know in the comments. Also, just let me know what your personal guilty pleasure games are. What games do you like playing that you don't necessarily talk about that you like playing, that you're afraid of people judging you for? Let's have a conversation about video games. This is something that really interests me. And in honor of the late Dale Earnhardt, don't forget to fist bump that thumbs up button down below and subscribe to Skybox Entertainment for more dumb videos like this. Dale, yeah.